The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are solely those of the individuals interviewed or participating and do not represent those of Charlie Crimebuster nor Peacemaker Network. All individuals described or mentioned in the presentation should be considered innocent until found guilty in a court of law. This presentation contains subject matter such as violence and graphic descriptions, which may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
The Menendez Brothers, will they be out by summer? James Buckland and I, we're going to talk about it during tonight's program. Welcome aboard the Charlie Crime Train today. James, tell the folks where they can find us on the webs.
Well, Charlie, thank you. Yeah, we can find them almost anywhere on any platform that has any podcasts. We're usually there. You can usually find us there. They can also reach out with a shout out to charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. if they have suggestions, if they have opinions, and even if they agree or disagree. We want to hear from them, and they can just simply send us a text message or email us at charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. And as I mentioned, I got a little ahead of myself, but they can text us at 407-917-2211. That's 407-917-2211. And again, a reminder, this podcast is sponsored by peacemaker-network.com, and we want to say thank you to all those who support our podcast and our men and women, first responders, our law enforcement, and our military by being monthly badge members. That's badge, BADGE members, by subscribing to Peacemaker Network. That's peacemaker-network.com. And if you're a true crime junkie, we would like to encourage you to binge-cast. We have over 239 podcasts at charliecrimebuster.com. That's charliecrimebuster.com. And also, you can find us on many podcast platforms, and you can even ask your smart speaker to play Charlie Crimebuster. But since you're here on YouTube, just simply click that subscribe button and the notification bell, and every time we drop an episode, you'll be notified.
That sounds great. And by the way, I think when you talk about going to charliecrimebuster.com and binge-cast, we have a couple, probably 2 or 3 more podcasts that we've dropped on this particular case, right?
Yes, we do. We have there's a total of 6, I believe. My memory serves me correctly.
Oh wow! So we've done 6 podcasts on this subject, because it is it's certainly an interesting case for those of us who were around when it happened, and I imagine for some people who were not around when it happened, it's a pretty incredible case.
Yep.
You think about, and if you remember, this really happened, James, when you think about it, when really the idea of broadcasting these trials and this becoming a national event, it was right kind of during that time. You have the O.J. Simpson deal, that became really big news, and people watched it in their living rooms as it developed, and so several, and then this was right along that same time. So
yeah, it was.
It certainly is a case that's very intriguing and has a lot of interest from a lot of people. And now we know that, as we said in our topic and our podcast, that these guys who slaughtered their parents could actually get out of prison.
That's right. That's right. You have, and to correct myself from the numbers you were asking, whether we had podcasts. We had 3 podcasts and 3 crime talk shows. So it's a total of 6, plus this past weekend's podcast makes a total of 7 shows that they can listen to or watch on YouTube or any one of our podcast.
Oh, okay.
Platforms.
So, folks, I tell you, there's when you talk about binge casting, there's a whole buffet of binge for people to binge cast there at charliecrimebuster.com, right?
Right. And, we would like to encourage people especially that are, traveling on the road or traveling to where they don't have the time to actually read the information or keep up with the times. We do our best to try to keep people up with what's going on, what's current, and anything that's attractive in the news, especially real time true events that are happening. We do our best to cover them.
Yeah, and I think that's good. I like the fact that, we did drop some podcasts on this subject and a lot of other subjects, but when other things come to our knowledge and to the knowledge of the public, for instance, this case, lay dominant for so long, like 18 years,
Mm-hmm.
nothing happening, and then
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden it happens, and so we try. In all of our cases, to update people on what's happening. I mean, we've got some new stuff getting ready to happen with Lori Daybell.
Mm-hmm.
We've got some new stuff getting ready to happen in the Idaho students killing.
Right.
You know,
Right.
that case is getting ready to go to trial,
Mm-hmm.
and there's just a whole host of. In fact, our last episode when we talked about Karen, who ran over her husband in the snow,
Right.
and
Karen Reed. Mm-hmm.
yeah, Karen Reed, when they were talking about, that ended up with a mistrial,
Yep.
and now that's coming up. So there's a lot of new stuff for us to still add to the old stuff in the coming days.
That's a lot of unthinkable topics to cover.
Yes, it is. Yes, sir. It sure is. Yeah, yeah. It most certainly is.
Yeah, it's a great. I like the way that you've phrased this particular topic of unthinkable, because usually people think about, well, this will happen, that'll happen to this, but they don't think about the unthinkable that can
The
happen.
unthinkable. Yeah, and
Yeah,
there's
right.
some unthinkable. To me, it really is unthinkable that, and this is my opinion, and as we say on Charlie Crimebuster, it's a safe zone. You can, when you reach out with a shout out, you can disagree with us, but it's just unthinkable to me that these guys who did such a vicious murder would be out. It's just unthinkable to me.
Yeah, and and to your point, we do have listeners, I mean, all the way across the nation. I mean, we're here in
Hmm.
Florida, but all the way across the nation that listen to us and have encouraged us to continue and we're doing a good job. And, we appreciate listeners like that. They give us feedback that says, hey, you're doing all right. We like, it's interesting.
Hmm.
You keep it interesting, you keep it fresh. So we like hearing that.
Yeah. Well, let's get into our case tonight.
Well, you said unthinkable is that they could be out of prison by summer. Could that really, really happen, Charlie?
Well, it's possible, but not likely. But it could be possible.
Wow.
That we have the hearing,
Mm-hmm.
which will come, and then there'll be resentencing if
Mm-hmm.
they say that they can be resentenced. Then it would take the parole board, would then have to meet, and because
Mm-hmm.
right now they're in prison without the possibility of parole.
Right.
If the resentencing takes place and they get sentenced for like 30 years, 40 years, whatever, or they get sentenced to life and they do not have the without the possibility of parole, then
Mm-hmm.
the next step would be to go to the parole board. And actually, if they resentence them for a number of years and those years were already served, then they wouldn't even have to go to the parole board. They could just walk out then. But I have an idea that if they are resentenced and it is without parole, then I mean, if if it is sentenced and they don't have that without the possibility of parole added to it, I do think that it would then go to the parole board. And but if all that we talked about,
Mm-hmm.
if it was executed quickly, then yep, they could be free before summer.
Wow. Okay. What is there any other possibilities that they could get? Is there any other avenues that they could take to get out?
Well, there are some, there is another avenue, and that's they have also contacted the governor. We'll talk about that a little later in the podcast, but
Gotcha.
there could be some clemency there, as well.
Uh-huh.
But the thing really that could keep that from happening, as we're going along with what we're talking about,
Right.
the thing that could keep that from happening would be, first of all, the recommendation from the DA.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to this, when we were doing this in real time, the DA in Los Angeles there was bent toward being a more lenient on their sentencing.
Right.
And he was going to recommend that resentencing because he felt, and there are some people in the country that feel, that that the people did not understand sexual abuse like we do today,
Right.
and the idea that young men could be sexually abused,
Right.
that wasn't talked about a lot and wasn't even a focus of it.
Mm-hmm.
So he thinks that because people understand that more today, that they should have an opportunity to be resentenced. Now, on the other hand, that DA was beat in the election after he brought that to surface.
Oh.
And there's a new DA, there's a new sheriff in town.
Uh-huh.
And this sheriff is a little harder on crime, a little stronger on law and order, in my opinion. And he's looked at the case and he said he would make his recommendation. And so we're waiting to see what he would say. And basically, his approach to it is that, first of all, that this idea that proves without a shadow of a doubt that they were sexually abused is, he says, there's not really proof there.
Mm-hmm.
All we have is what one person said in a letter that another person wrote, which
Right.
is not necessarily true, which is not necessarily evidence. And he said that's not proven. He said, but beyond that, I think and I agree with him, that stands out to me is that I've never seen in this entire case, everything I've read, everything I've seen, every video I've seen, every news program I've seen, I have never, ever really seen. I've never seen that these guys have had any remorse whatsoever for what they did.
Yeah.
I just don't see that. And when you talk about somebody being rehabilitated, which is what you look for if you're going to be lenient on a sentence,
Mm-hmm.
then I think there would have to be some remorse. I think there would have to be, hey, I'm really sorry that I did this.
Mm-hmm.
Up to this point, they really haven't even confessed that they did it to the court. Now they've confessed it to a psychologist, but never confessed it to the court. So he's saying that in order for that to happen, he would have to see them, show some remorse and also be willing to confess, hey, we did the deed, we were wrong in doing the deed. Mm-hmm. And so right now, his recommendation is no on the resentencing. But he said that it's really going to be up to the judge. Whatever the judge says, will be what they're looking at. So,
Mm-hmm.
if how this could not happen, even the judge could say, no, I don't think that we should resentence. I think these guys, did the deed, and there's anything in there that says that we should resentence them. So there could be the idea that this could not happen just as well as it could happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me put you on the spot, if I may. What do you think will happen?
I don't think that it will happen, based on the fact that I think the judge will lean toward whatever the DA says.
Uh-huh.
And I think that the DA would certainly has more. I think he has more understanding of what's going on, and I think the judge will line up with the DA. I could be wrong, but if you want to know what I think the judge will line up with the DA, and I think there will not be a resentence.
So they'll have to spend the rest of their life in jail without parole.
Mm-hmm. That's what I think. I hope that's what happens, but we'll see.
Okay. All right. Well, before we get into into our next segment, let's tell us about this week's Crazy Crooks, plural.
Yeah, we have. Sometimes these crazy crook stories come in pairs.
They do.
And in this situation, every parent always dreads to get that phone call in the middle of the night if you have teenagers out going anywhere, doing anything.
Oh yeah.
You're afraid that something happened to them. They got in a car accident or something like that, or you dread to hear that maybe the cops picked them up.
Uh-huh.
And in this situation, they were picked up. These kids were picked up, and I think I read that it's for joyriding. Uh-huh. But they picked them up, and a lot of times I did this. Sometimes when I was out on the road, if you pick up a teenager and it's not a serious crime or no one's hurt or harmed or this sort of thing, sometimes you would maybe just write a citation and ask the parents to come to the station to pick them up.
Right.
And so this is what happened that day. That night they got the call. They two people came, the guardian and someone else came to pick them up. And I guess as they were going home, they decided, well, let's pull over and talk about what happened. So they pulled over into this business late at night, and they were sitting there parked. Now, imagine if you are a police officer, and you're on late night patrol, what you're looking for is anything unusual.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking for anything that might be out of a sequence from what you're used to seeing. And if you're driving and doing patrol and you see a car parked late at night at a business that is closed, and you see 4 people in that vehicle, then you have, I think, not only a right, but actually a responsibility to check it out.
Absolutely.
And so they did check it out. And of course, the first thing we usually do in those situations is we'll run the registration. And so they ran the registration on that vehicle, and guess what? Surprise, surprise, surprise. The car that they were in was stolen. It was stolen. So here are these people that are crazy enough to go pick up their kids who are at the police station because they've been joyriding. So they are crazy enough to come in a stolen vehicle to pick up the kids. So then, of course, all 4 of them, the guardian, his friend, and the 2 teenagers, juveniles, they all are, of course, transported back to the Popo station. And so, if you're crazy enough to go to the police station to get your kids who've already picked up for joyriding, and you go pick them up in a stolen car, then you do indeed qualify for Charlie Crimebuster's Crazy Crook of the Week, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And right after I say that, we ought to have that little music that you put in the podcast. No. That clown music,
Yeah.
So that was our Crazy Crooks this week.
Oh, my word. Yeah, when I heard the podcast and I heard the story, I was like, "Are you kidding me? You actually go to pick up your kids in a car that has been stolen?"
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
You can't make this stuff up. Well, back to the unthinkable of the Menendez brothers. The timeline was shared, but what was the gist of that, and what should we look for in the timeline?
Well, like we say in all of our cases, we help the people understand the case a lot better if they understand the timeline
Right.
and the sequence of events. Because oftentimes, when these cases come out, you see a part of the case that may not be put in order. It may be you see a piece of the case here and you don't know what all is going on.
Right.
So I think it's important to do that. And this is a pretty simple timeline. It was 1989 that their parents were in their house, in their home, and these teenage boys, these guys coming in, or these young men come in, and it's not just, and this is the thing that's so horrific about this crime. It wasn't just a quick shot, to a kill shot. They came in with shotguns, and shotguns, James, as probably and probably everybody knows,
Yep.
it just does terrible damage. I mean,
It does.
terrible damage. Instead of a small bullet, so a small projectile, you got a whole round projectile. And in fact, they had almost shot off the head of one of the parents, and they just continued to fire and continued to fire. I mean, this was a horrific crime that took place in August of 1989. Now, as we see in all of these crimes, you don't usually see this happen quickly. So it wasn't until this happened in March of 1989. I mean, August of 1989. It was in March of 1990 that they made the arrests. At first they were looking for, well, maybe that this was a cult that had done this. They were looking at the fact that he was tied into, it was told that he was tied in with the mob, and this could have been a mob killing and all of this sort of thing. But then they noticed that these young men, the Menendez brothers, were spending money like mad. They were spending their parents' money. So when they started seeing that, they're thinking, well, maybe this is a motive, maybe this is a motive, but they still didn't have anything, to prove it, and what is so amazing about this, I think, which is a real misstep on the police, one of the shotguns was in the trunk of one of their cars, and it was there at the crime scene, and the police did not even check it,
Oh boy.
So, and then they, took it and threw it away. But the thing about this was that they didn't have proof of it until one of the brothers then, as people know the story is, sat down, talked to the psychologist, and confessed it. The
Right.
psychologist, he he had a mistress. He was having an affair. Those things never turn out right, as you know. And so,
Wow.
you've heard the scorned lover, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so,
Mm-hmm.
he told his mistress about this. The mistress blabs to somebody else, and in fact, she goes to the police. And so then in 1990, they're arrested. Well, even though it took all the way to March 1990 from August 1989 for them to be arrested,
Mm-hmm.
guess what? It took all the way to January 1994 before the first, verdict came in from the juries. And
Wow.
when they were first tried, they were actually tried by separate juries. But guess what? And this is a little amazing. Both of those juries deadlocked. So there was a
Mm.
deadlock there. But now, again, this was not a mistrial with prejudice. So this means they could be tried again.
Right.
So 1989, we have the murder. 1990, they're arrested. 1994, the first jury. And then it's March 1996, the second trial. And this trial has both of them being tried at the same time. And in 1996, both brothers are convicted. And in July of 1996, both of them are sentenced. And here's that important sentence: to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Gotcha.
So, so we have from 1989 to 1996, and then from 1996 all the way up to 2005, they go through that appeal process that most people get when they get life. Appeal,
Right.
appeal, 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 all kinds of court filings, and then nothing is overturned, and it looks like it's all done with. And then there is around 18 years from 2005, around 18 years, there's just nothing really happening. Not nothing of sensationalism or no interaction with the court that is really important for anybody to look at.
Mm-hmm.
So then 18 years later, the DA out there is of course a Netflix special that just recently was
Right.
shown. And
Right.
then there was a lot of pressure from the liberal element out in California. Even the family
Mm-hmm.
got involved and put the pressure on the DA, and the DA said, "Well, I'm going to go ahead and make a recommendation to the court that they be resentenced." And so that puts us up pretty well in the timeline, all the way back from August 1989.
Well, tell us about the glamour slammer.
Well, that's a term that you hear a lot of time. You hear a lot of cops say it because you know sometimes people they well, I guess I don't know any other way to say it, but a lot of people feel sorry for people that are behind bars, and it's
Mm-hmm.
not it's not a it's not a fun existence, and it's not meant to be a fun existence. It's
Exactly.
supposed to be punishment, this sort of thing. And so, you think that these guys are, in a that they're basically in a uh, uh, maybe confinement, solitary confinement, or something like that. But it's not quite that way. They are basically they're basically put into something called the Echo Yard, and the Echo Yard, you have a lot more freedom. Get this: they have yoga classes, they have art classes,
What?
they have yoga classes and art classes. And in California now, I've been around jails a lot. I was a chief deputy, and we had a jail under our auspices as a sheriff's department. And I've
Mm-hmm.
worked in other situations, and they are able to make phone calls, but they usually have to pay for those phone calls. But in California, they get to make free phone calls. I mean,
Wow.
yeah, it's even free for them to make those phone calls out there.
Hmm.
And get this, these guys are not living in cells; they're living in dorms.
Dorms.
Dorms. To me, when you come to the Echo Yard, it appears to me more like adult daycare than prison. So
Wow.
I call it a glamour slammer. And both of these guys have been married, so they found love behind bars.
Yeah.
So you even have that going on, that they've been married and they have love behind bars. And so I certainly think that you would not, I would not, none of us would like our children, our loved ones, to have to live in confinement.
No.
But these people, I can't say that I really feel sorry for them because at least they get to live life, and their parents did not get to live beyond that day in 1989.
It's so true. So very true.
Yeah.
You mentioned justice could be green. What did you mean by that?
Well, that's kind of like the golden rule. I've heard of the golden rule. He who has the gold rules, right?
Right. He that has the gold makes all the rules. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So and I brought this out on the podcast. These guys are in prison with a sentence of life without the possibility of parole.
Hmm.
They're certainly not the only people in prison for life without the possibility of parole. There are a number of people in prison for life without the possibility of parole who did not do near as violent and as violent of a crime as these guys did.
Right.
But yet these guys are going to at least get a chance, it looks like, for perhaps resentencing. Well, the reason why they're getting that is that their family and they have the kind of money to contact the kind of attorneys that can make that happen.
Wow.
And you think about the poor guy
Hmm.
who maybe
Hmm.
maybe in a heat of passion he shot the lover of his wife. We call that a heat of passion,
Right.
type of thing.
Yep.
And he's in prison without the possibility of parole and did not do near as violent of a deed as these guys did, killing both their mother and father. And he has no chance for something like this because he doesn't have an attorney that can go to bat for him to make that happen.
Right.
So, in some ways, you'd have to say justice is green, money. It,
Right.
it does. I will tell you, James, that it is a fact that, and I'm not saying that this is true about all the public defenders because there's some really great public defenders out there. There are some guys
Oh yeah.
who really have a heart for this. They feel like it's a calling, and they really put their whole heart, soul, and mind in it. And thank God for those people.
Right.
But for there, I will tell you this: that the person that gets the best deal in these things, even in the justice system, are usually the people who have the best attorney.
Hmm. Hmm.
And if you can't afford the best attorney, then you may not get the best attorney. You
Wow.
know,
Wow.
and so that's a part of our justice system. And I will be the first to say I love America, I love our justice system, but it's not perfect.
No. No, it's not.
But I do not know of any justice system in the world that's more fair than what we have in the United States of
I
America.
agree with that too.
But
Yep.
it's not perfect,
Nope.
and that's one thing I think that's a part of this, that these folks have money. We even think about another podcast we just did recently, of the insurance executive who was shot and killed,
Right. Right.
and this kid that did that, he's got all kinds of money.
Right.
And
Yeah.
on top of that, he's raised, as of last account, almost $500,000 have been given in donations to him,
Hmm. Hmm.
for it. So I mean, he's got money for attorneys. Now, will that make a difference? It probably makes some difference. I don't think I'm positive in my mind. I don't think he'll get off of it, off of this of crime that he did. But that's another podcast coming up, right?
There you go. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I don't think, I'm not saying that the best attorney in the world sometimes can't really move in something like that. But I do think that they're getting this possibility because of the fact that they have the wealth to make it happen.
Right. I even saw that Kitty's sister, the mother of the boy's sister, was even um, trying to help both the boys financially as well as moral support in getting them released as well. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and the
yeah,
family for it, and I mean, if it was my son or my nephew or something like that, and
yeah.
we we'd all nobody wants to see their family in confinement.
No,
Very
no.
few people do, so I
Well,
can understand that.
what surprise did you mean when that you said could happen in this case?
Well, that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, and that is that the beyond this, they have also approached the governor, Governor Newsom, out of California,
Mm,
and
hmm.
they've asked him to maybe for some clemency. And in fact, he could pardon them, but at least he could, do clemency for time served or something like that.
True.
And so that is the surprise in this. I mean, even with all this, he could come up and do something tomorrow. That would be a surprise.
That is true. So what is that possibility?
I do not think that Governor Newsom will show clemency. I do not think that he will pardon them, and I'll tell you why. I think Governor Newsom has an eye on for running for president. And this move could be very unpopular, for him to step in and do something like that. So
Interesting.
I really don't think that he would do that, and I think he's already signaled that he would not do that because he's already made the comments before he'll do anything. He will look at the recommendation from the district attorney.
Yeah, I read that as well. Yep.
I think that, and the district attorney, as we know, is not very keen on this happening. The one that they have now, the one that was just elected. So I do not think that there will be a pardon from Governor Newsom. Now, on the other hand, politicians have a way of putting their finger up in the air, and testing the wind. And so if he saw a lot of support coming the other way, that might change. But I don't think it would at this point.
It's interesting you should put it that way. So what is the next step?
Well, the next step is, like we talked about, there's going to be at least a hearing to see if there will be a resentencing. And then after that hearing, if there is a resentence, the judge will say yay or nay. And if he says yay, then there'll be a resentencing, and they'll have to see what that resentencing is. And if the resentencing is to take away the parole question, in other words, give them the opportunity for parole, then it'll go to parole board, and then the parole board will make a decision. Now, in the resentencing, though, if he says he resentences them for less years than they've already served, they could walk out right away, or he could say no, not going to resentence them, and they're right there. So,
wow.
So there's where we are.
And so, what's coming up this coming weekend?
Well, we're watching a lot of these other cases very, very closely,
right?
And I always kind of wait to see what is really happening before I really go in that direction. So people will just have to, they'll have to look and see, right?
That's right. Stay tuned.
That's right. Stay tuned. Right. put that little, tease out there, right?
That's right. That's exactly right.
But I guarantee you, it'll be something that we're all thinking about, and hopefully we'll give some information that will help our crime junkies, and at least have some very interesting things to listen to.
I agree. I agree with you there. Well, thanks again, Charlie. This is, as always, it's always a good time to recap not only what was on the podcast, but also have discussions and find a little more information about each case. Thank you so much for, doing the additional research and providing us more insight.
Well, it's always a pleasure to talk to our folks out there on the Charlie Crime Train. We appreciate every one of them.
Absolutely.
We hope you'll take time to share the podcast with other people. The more you share it, the more opportunity we have to reach more people with these podcasts.
That's right.
And we would appreciate that. So until next time, this is Charlie Crimebuster reminding you, stay safe, stay alert. Yep. For the life you save, it could be your very own.
You have been listening to Charlie Crimebuster. You can find additional podcasts at charliecrimebuster.com. You can also support our first responders, military, and law enforcement communities at peacemakernetwork.com, or subscribe to our YouTube channel using tag @CharlieCrimebuster. Even visit our Facebook page, facebook.com/CharlieCrimebuster. Or if you would like to make suggestions for future podcasts, please send your ideas to charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you will join us next week for another exciting crime story with Charlie Crimebuster.